Welcome to the Together for Education in Ames podcast, where we have meaningful conversations on the state of our local school districts. Schools should be a place of hope for children, where they can come and learn without fear of being judged and labeled. We advocate for unity in our student population and excellence in education. I'm Kira Werstein, your host. Hosting with me today is Jen Pinto. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our recent education bill that was passed called the Transparency in Education Bill. It was passed in the Iowa House. It's now headed to the Senate. Again, my name's Kira Werstein. I'm a college teaching professor and mother of 3 children in the Ames School District.
And I am Jennifer Pinto. I am a teacher in the Ames Community School District, and now I am sitting here on behalf as an individual.
All right. So, Jen, let's start with why was there a need for this bill? What's the background? Are you aware of the content? That's really what's at the heart of this, the content that's been flagged in schools across Iowa, which is why this transparency bill. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, because of what's being taught. And
with respect to the critical consciousness and
the books in our libraries.
And those topics regarding sexuality. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and this is actually across the country, not just in Iowa, but there's sexually explicit books that are available in school libraries and then taught in some classrooms. This is certainly not all classrooms. I am myself too much of a prude to read any clips from these books. I will give kind of a brief summary, but we will link if you would like to read some of the content from this for yourself. Just a broad example of, I've read many of them, but one author in one of the books that was flagged as concerning, the author wrote about child prostitution. So in this book, the child is selling themselves to help pay for family expenses. The author writes from the perspective of the child, and the child is quoted as describing the experience as painful, but then also the child says that they enjoyed it at the same time. So as I'm reading this is troubling that these books are in schools for several reasons. One of the reasons is because prostitution and child pornography are illegal. And this is really the same thing as child pornography, except it's just in written form. Mm-hmm. And I do want to pause there and say, I think it's really important to say that the concern that I have, and I think most people have with these books, is not, and I repeat, the problem is not with the sexual orientation of the characters in the books. It doesn't matter what their orientation is of any character. The problem is that it is sexually explicit, and so that could be any orientation. And most reasonable adults agree that it's not a good thing to expose a child to pornography and to prostitution, and then also tell the child that, hey, other children actually enjoy this. Are you familiar with any of the books specifically?
Yes. I have read some of the clips in these books. I don't understand how they are in our school libraries.
And as far as Ames goes, they've either taken them out or I have not seen them in the Ames schools. Have you looked through?
Yeah, I have not seen them. I've asked people in the high school, if they could look it up.
Yeah.
There's been a couple I've tried to see if they have it, and
there's
don't.
Not. Okay. Yeah. But the heart of this is, I think that the parents want to know more about what is happening at school, what their children are exposed to. And I even want to, again, take a step back and say that I support free speech, freedom of religion, and if these authors want to write on these topics, they should be able to write on these topics. But where the line is drawn for parents as they send their children to school and are entrusting the school with their children, and clearly the Iowa House Representatives also shares this concern, is that it is a parent's right to decide what sexual content their child is exposed to and at what age. Because anybody that has multiple children know that children are ready to hear this information at different ages. No child is just alike. So it's just not for school personnel in a public school to expose a child to this content without a parent's knowledge. And this has been happening. So this bill was passed, Transparency Bill in Education, and it's aimed at providing more transparency of the curriculum and the books that are available. So it would require schools to upload school material online so that parents have access. And then in the classroom, teachers would have to upload the items taught to children online as well. And so parents would have access to both the library books. They'd be able to opt their children out so their children wouldn't be able to check out these materials. And then there is a 14-day grace period for teachers for uploading their materials online. And if they don't, there is a penalty that's described in this bill. School districts would receive a civil penalty, and the teacher could also have their teacher license taken away if the parents were to submit and file a complaint of violation to the Board of Educational Examiners. Some people, the concerns with this requirement, some people are concerned about overworking teachers and driving future teachers out of the workforce. Jen, what are your thoughts on the pros and the cons with this bill?
I think it was written probably in good effort to have that transparency so parents do know what's being taught. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it took COVID to really, I think, open parents' eyes to say, oh, this is happening in my child's classroom and I don't agree. I feel like parents are starting to wake up mm-hmm. and take control again of their students' education. And so this is a part of that, helping that transparency so parents know what's going on. That's good. As a parent, I want to know, and I've asked teachers at my daughter's school, will you be teaching this, this, and this? Because I want to know. And of course, I'm constantly asking my daughter. So, we've talked about what's being taught and what I don't want her being taught, and she'll let me know. But at the same time, so this is a good maybe problem solver for transparency. At the same time, a teacher can upload all of her materials, but once she closes that door, how do we know? How do we know the honesty? Mm-hmm. Do I really know what's being taught day in and day out behind the closed doors of my daughter's classroom? And that's where I don't know if this will be as effective as they were hoping it would be.
So what you're saying is, unless you have someone in the classroom mm-hmm. observing, yeah. or the child is able to report back home,
right,
then there's not any way to hold that accountable or to actually know that what's online is actually, in fact, what's being...
And where is the accountability of what is being taught in those classrooms? You can put stuff online, sure, but like I said, what if the teacher wants to share something out of a book that is not appropriate? Or, that would not be appropriate for the students. And unfortunately, it seems like there are districts who think that they are above the law.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So what would this do for them?
Mm-hmm. So written in the law is, and I hear this, like I'm thinking especially of younger elementary, they don't know what is against the law and what isn't, and mm-hmm. they just trust anything that comes through for the most part. And so really this is put in place, but it requires that parents still be paying very close attention and that children are able to report home. Because unless there's another teacher that observes or an EA that might be in the classroom, then what this is basically doing is giving parents a tool that they can then go to the BOEE, the Board of Educational Examiners, and submit a complaint of violation. And so teachers know in the back of their mind if they would not be following this. And so there's that layer of accountability. But unless there are teachers that actually have a complaint submitted and then lose their license, it really does no good, is what you're saying.
Right. And as I've stated, it seems like we do have teachers in districts who think that they can continue to do their agenda.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically what you're saying is it's going to continue until teachers are caught and they lose their license. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. Now, do you have any concerns about the level of workload that it would increase? Because that's the biggest concern that it sounds like people bring up. And so I teach at the college level, and we are actually, as of COVID, we're required to have all of our things online. I've actually had all of my curriculum posted online since I started teaching about 14, 15 years ago. And we have online learning platforms. Actually, I think that most professors at the college level would agree it actually decreases workload. On the front end, it seems like more, but once you have it up over time, it saves time because it is available then for students that are absent for illness, for travel, for sports. Then they come to you and say, hey, I won't be in class next week or tomorrow, or what did I miss? And then, there it is. It's already ready for them. Yeah. And then it also is helpful, I would imagine, to a new teacher that's, like, say they're coming into second grade and they have to get all the materials ready. Well, it's already available to them from the previous teacher, the previous second grade teacher. So that would save new teachers that have to, or change grades, and so save a lot of time on that end. And then I would also think that it could save time or increase collaboration rather across the district with, say, all second grade teachers. We have 5 elementary schools. All second grade teachers can share resources and collaborate. Hey, this worked in my classroom. Here's a resource, and it could be helpful in that regard as well. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it. I can see the con of, one of the cons would be the more workload at the beginning, but I can also see that once it's on there, it could decrease.
Yeah, it's
efficient. The workload. Very efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with that, I think also what perhaps is at the root of this is that there have been parents, there have been people across the state, the country, that have lost trust in our education system from what they've learned is going on. And so I think this has the potential to help restore that trust when people are able to see, okay, you are teaching academic topics, you are teaching math, like that's great. I think my guess is that some of the resistance as well is that teachers may feel like, people are looking over their shoulder then, or they might feel like, oh, people don't trust me. Why don't they trust me? Do you think that could be part of it?
It could be. However, I would say if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you shouldn't have to worry about someone looking over your shoulder.
Right.
Like that's just, as a teacher, I've offered people to come in whenever they want.
Yeah. And so that might actually reduce the amount of contacts and meetings that you need to have with parents, because the resources are right there and available and they can just look at it instead of having to go to you and then you send them attachments. Right. And so, but again, I think over time, my hope is that it will help restore some trust when parents and just across the district and we're all able to learn about what more is going on in the classroom. Any other thoughts that you have on this bill?
Not really. I would hope that, for me, I really hope that this bill does what it's intended to, and that's to keep schools, districts accountable to what they're teaching, what they're putting in the libraries, because it's not okay.
Yeah, and if some parents, like, just one last time, if some parents want to use that material for their children in their home, then we respect that, right, for them to do that. But every parent navigates those conversations with family values differently, and that's part of what embracing diversity is that everybody's got different views on family values and sexuality and these topics, and so respecting the family's right to have those conversations with their children when it's appropriate for them is what is coming down to the heart of this bill here.
Yeah.
So with that, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, join the conversation. We want to hear your thoughts, because it's together that we build a thriving community in Ames and Central Iowa.